Hello and welcome back to the Brussels Signal studio. My name is Justin Stairs and our guest today is Tom Vandendriessche. Welcome.
Perfectly pronounced.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for coming to the studio. Mr. Vandendriessche is Flemish, Belgian, though probably in that order, and is a member of the Vlaams Belang Party. It sits in the European Parliament, was elected in 2019. Now, the Vlaams Belang is a separatist party. I'd like to explain a little about the complex nature of Belgian politics because not many people are familiar with the fact that there is a very strong separatist movement in Flanders. And in fact, your party, which is, according to the polls, which will be the largest party after this year's Belgian elections, is in favour of setting up its own state. Now, in fact, we've had opinion polls today suggesting that support for separatism in Flanders is at around 40%, so within striking distance. And the big question is, will separatists, there are two parties in Flanders, one is a bit milder than your party, the N-VA, but the question is, will separatists have 50% of the seats after the Belgian elections? And if so, will there be some kind of vote of for independence? Or I know that your leader, Tom Vandendriessche, has talked about a vote of sovereignty and then a period of independence negotiations. So let's start perhaps with your country, with Flanders, and this independence movement. I guess the big question is not really whether your party will come first or not. It's how strong will the vote be for the N-VA party, which now, is it true to say that the N-VA party officially believe in the independence of Flanders, but in reality, they're not quite as committed as your party? Is that a fair description?
That's true, but to explain the situation here in Belgium, I will briefly give you a sum up. So Flemish people are 60% of the population. We pay 70% of taxes. We're good for 80% of the exports. So we are the financial, demographic, political powerhouse in Belgium. We pay the bills, so to speak. But we only have 50% of political power. And there's a financial transfer from Flanders, the north, to the south, which amounts in percentage of GDP, is higher than from west to east Germany after the fall of communism. Just imagine that. And we cannot do anything about this. Furthermore, Flanders is a right-wing voting region. For over 100 years, we vote almost 3/4 center-right. Wallonia, the French-speaking region, is quite the opposite. They vote over 100 years, three-quarters center-left, even communist. So you have two different democracies. You add it together on a Belgium level, and it just doesn't work because it's like a rope, and you're pulling on the opposite sides of the rope. So this doesn't work. Now this frustrates Flemish people because we need to pay the bills of communist Wallonia. So this is why parties like my party, Vlaams Belang, but also N-VA, so Flemish-oriented, patriotic, nationalistic parties, are gaining ground. And who is losing? The left is not winning in Flanders. It's the center-right, the classical liberal parties, the classical Christian democratic parties who are losing. Now, we are coming, in my opinion, at the end of this cycle. Flemish people are so fed up because it's not only about the financial transfers, it's also about how we look at migration, for example. Communist Wallonia want more migration, we want less migration. On really every aspect, we have opposing views. And we cannot, so we are voting for politicians, but we cannot have the politics after the elections. This frustrates people enormously. So they are voting not only for Vlaams Belang, but also for N-VA. And why are the voters from N-VA now voting Vlaams Belang might be an interesting question. It's because they had 33% of the vote in 2014. And they entered in the federal government with no guarantee at all to change anything about the institutions in Belgium. So logically, they failed because the Walloons have a veto right on everything. So this is why people are flocking in huge numbers to Vlaams Belang. We are now currently at 28% of the vote on average. So we're not only the largest party in Flanders, but also in
Largest in
Wallonia.
Belgium,
We
right,
could
right.
be bigger than the two biggest party in Wallonia. Just imagine that. And they exclude us. Why do they exclude the Belgian system? Excludes us. Why? Because we want to change something. And we want to have politics, sound politics, where Flemish people are voting for. And we are going to deliver on that.
Right, okay. What about the argument that the majority of Flemish people even are actually, some people say, not in favour of independence? They vote for right-wing parties for economic reasons, maybe migration, as you say, is a big topic. And
Number one topic in
and
Flanders.
for the Flemish, in fact, separatism or a new state is fairly low down their list of priorities. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct, because institutional discussions, topics, these are interesting for politicologues, for example, or politicians, but it's not tangible in everyday life. But everything which is attached to this institutional question is, for example, migration. Flemish people are occupied with the number one is migration. They want less migration. We are completely fed up with this mass migration. But we cannot have this in Belgium because the Walloons have an open border policy. So if Flemish people want less migration, you need more Flanders. If you want to lower taxes, we pay the highest taxes on labor of any country in Europe. Why do we pay this amount of taxes? Because we need to pay the bills for the Walloons.
So
and
what
for
you're
migration.
saying is you need a separate country in order to implement the policies that you want. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So is it going to happen? I mean, I know it depends on what you get in the vote, but let's say you're 6 seats short with the MVA, if I understand, in the Flemish Parliament today. So let's presume you get an extra 6 and you've got the 50% plus 1 that you need. And then the plan is this declaration of sovereignty. And then a period of negotiations with the Walloons on the end of Belgium, right? I mean,
We Flemish, we are not revolutionaries. We are reasonable people, and we are a moderate people. So what is our plan? This is our offer to the voter. We are very clear on this. Belgium does not work. Over the last 15 years, everybody has seen that this is a democracy that simply doesn't work, because it is not a democracy. It is a system designed to neglect the will of the majority of the people, which are the Flemish. So over the last 15 years, we had 5 years without a federal government. We broke the world record of a country without a federal government twice. More than 500 days. Nobody noticed. But just imagine that. Yeah. And what will likely happen is that there will be a Flemish nationalist patriot majority in Flanders. There will be in Wallonia a left-wing majority. There will be functioning regional governments, and the regional governments in Belgium are on the same level as the federal government. There is no hierarchy, like in, for example, Germany or France or any other, or the United States, any other country. So there's no hierarchy. We have exclusive competences. So we will have functioning governments, but no federal government. So this is why when we're going to declare our sovereignty in our democratically elected parliament, according to international laws and customs, this is a signal for us from a position of strength in the Flemish government. We are going to reach the hand and sit at the table with the Walloon government, and we will enter into negotiations as the Czechoslovak Republic, separated after the fall of communism, in an orderly way.
Okay. Now, I'd like to come back to the future of Europe, but let's move on to migration. Now, as you say, a big topic for not only the Flemish, in fact, across Europe. You have participated in the negotiations on the Migration Pact, which has now been approved in the European Parliament. Now, it's been attacked from both sides. It's been attacked from both the left and the right. You, I'm presuming you don't approve of the final legislation, and if not, why not?
So, everybody knows the diagnosis. We basically have an open door policy. The EU abolished the internal borders, but they lack the protection on the external borders. Asylum procedure is being misused as a way of migration to Europe, and this is what is continuously promoting the business model of human traffickers. This is horrible. On the other side, we do see that the right to asylum we are in favor of that. If people are being prosecuted or are fleeing for war, they should have the right to protection. But this is a right to protection, not a right to move to no matter what country in the world which has the open border policy and the best social security where you can enjoy without ever having contributed to it. So this is a diagnosis. What the EU is now promoting with the EU Migration Pact are two main elements. One is the asylum procedure. So they have, they want to have some kind of filtering at the external borders, check they want to build some databases, the Eurodac file, for example. But basically, they want to overtake the asylum procedure gradually from the nation states. They want to be able to push asylum seekers to countries that have never asked for it. So I think this is not a sensible approach to the crisis of the asylum crisis in 2015. I think our proposal is that the right to safeguard the right to asylum, it must be sustainable. And where is it? How is it sustainable? By doing it in the region of origin by definition. Only on high exception. Political leaders, for example, you can accept as a nation state to live here. But by definition, the right to asylum should only apply in neighboring countries or the region of origin. I give you one example. My party is not a pro-migration party or pro-asylum party. When the Ukraine-Russia war broke out, my party, and I personally in parliament, stated that this is our logic approach, that we must host these people because Europe is our region of origin, you see? So we must fulfill our duty. So this is one aspect. The EU Migration Pact will fail on this because there's no threshold on the number of asylum seekers coming, so they will just keep on coming for numerous reasons. And there's no effective return mechanism. So once in, you cannot get them out, while we have every tool to gain leverage. For example, the visa, the giving of visas.
Visa, right?
Visa, that's it. Yeah. The development aid, the trade. We have all of these tools, but we simply do not use it because the European Union has not the political will. This is asylum. The second is migration. And this is what the EU Migration Pact is really all about. Ylva Johansson, it are her own words.
This is the commissioner.
Commissioner Johansson. She said in the presentation of the EU Migration Pact, there are only 300,000 irregular illegals coming in, illegal migration each year. More important, she rightly said so, are 3.5 million legal migrants coming in already now, every year, so 3.5 million non-Europeans coming in. But she added one more question to it. She said there are demographic challenges in Europe. There are too few European births. The European population is aging. So she said, well, I have the perfect solution for that. We should import 1 million more non-Europeans per year. So she basically proposes, with talent pools, to actively promote migration from non-European countries to Europe of 4.5 million per year, 70 million in one generation. This EU Migration Pact is not about protecting our borders. It's not about guaranteeing the right to asylum to people who need it and who are rightly need it. It is replacement migration.
But what about the argument, though, I mean, which I presume you don't contest, that the European population is aging? It's a fact. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, according to the statistics we've reported on them, the Eurostat statistics, not only is it aging, but if you go forward a generation, it will actually be in decline. So there is an argument that we do need more young people here in Europe, right?
Without any doubt, we need sound politics and a sound demographic composition of Europe. That without any doubt. Now, how to do this? They are promoting migration. I think this will cause huge problems with the super diversity, which isn't so super at all. Multicultural living together, which is not so peaceful. We have seen the Islamic attacks all across Europe in recent years. So this is their model. I just don't believe in this. I don't think it's sustainable. And I think the alternative is, one is family policies. The average number of the average numbers of births, like the child wish, is perfectly normal in Flanders. I think also in the rest of Europe, it's about 2.1. It's perfectly normal. But half of the children that are wished are not being born. How come? How come young women are afraid to lose their job, for example? Discrimination against young women is a real problem in the labor market. So I think that, for example, the policies of Mr. Orban, but also in the Scandinavian countries where they really invest in family-friendly policies, I think about 5% of their GDP in Hungary.
Encourage births.
That's it. No. And it's not about encouraging births. It's about giving the freedom back to people to choose for families, because nowadays they simply cannot afford it. Housing prices, the inflation, just name it. People need to go to work with 2 full-time jobs and are barely able to live their lives if they want to. So it's not that people don't want children, but they don't have the freedom to choose for their family.
They can't afford them.
That's it. So we want to invest in pro-family policies. This is one aspect. And the second is, I think that we will not build the economy of the future in our highly developed Western nations with low-skilled, non-European labor imports. I just don't see it, because it's low productivity. There have been numerous studies on the cost of this kind of migration. We have done some study. We have published it about a month ago. And for example, a sub-Saharan African low-skilled laborer entering into Europe over the cycle of his life, because when he comes in and he works here, he has exactly the same social rights, social benefits, child support, social housing, and so on. So you have the system of family reunification, so they can bring the whole family over. We have had it calculated by the University of Amsterdam researchers. One sub-Saharan African migrant, low-skilled, costs over the cycle of his life 455,000 euros to the taxpayer. This is the reality. Maybe some big companies want cheap labor. They have imported the benefits for the shareholders, but the price is being paid by society. And I think there's an alternative for this. Not only family policies, pro-family policies, but also investing in the economy of the future. Just think about the chances we have with the AI developments, for example. Think about investing in robotization, informatization. All of these opportunities, I think we must have this industrial policy as, for example, Japan has. Japan has exactly the same problems on demographic problems as European, Western countries. And they are tackling this with investing in productivity.
Okay, I was interesting to hear the other side of the argument yesterday, because we had a Spanish socialist who came in, who sat in your chair, and I mean the politicians from the other side are saying that this is a humanitarian disaster because many people are dying.
I agree.
Trying to reach Europe to start with. And then you have also the frontline states which are overwhelmed, and these people keep coming. And I mean, your solution is to process these people in regional centres, essentially? I mean, where exactly would these asylum cases be processed?
My policy is a no-way policy. I want 0 asylum seekers coming to Europe. 0.
I mean, but how would you stop them coming, though?
Well, how do you...
You're saying if there was no opportunity, they wouldn't come in the first place. This is
That's
what you're
it.
saying.
And then you close the border. As you close the door...
Right. Yeah, and if they arrive, if they're fleeing a war, for example.
This is different thing. Already now, 90% of asylum seekers are being refuge in neighboring countries, and the United Nations is doing an effort. I think we need to step up our effort in this region of origins. So when the war is over, these people can easily return. You know, how come that of the 8 million migrants that have come here since 2015, since German Chancellor Merkel invited them all, of these 8 million, 70% are males. How come females are not fleeing? How come it is especially young males who are fleeing? Have the people who are in real trouble, they do not have the money to pay human smugglers. And this is the tragedy of everything.
Okay, so according to your plan, where would these asylum cases be processed?
In the region of origin, in the neighboring countries?
Let's take North Africa, for example. If somebody is seeking to flee persecution, perhaps because he or she is gay, right, and it's illegal in one of these African countries, what legal route would be open to him or her under your plans?
Well, I think human rights is a very valuable thing, but on the other hand, we cannot solve the problems in the whole world. It's just reality. There are boundaries at what we can do. But I do agree that people who are fleeing for prosecution, we must be able to help them. And I want to invest in that. I want to invest in neighboring countries. So it's up to these people to look to the neighboring countries and to us to support these neighboring countries when people are fleeing for prosecution or for war. But just why am I mentioning this idea of human rights? It's because the human rights, when it was originally written down, is a magnificent idea. But this is now being interpreted by often politically appointed judges as the right to migrate to no matter what country. And this is just not sustainable. And now they are having this idea of climate refugees. Well, if the climate is changing, everybody has a right to flee or something like that. I'm a politician elected in Flanders. First of all, I must not promote human rights. I support human rights. But first of all, I must promote the interest of my citizens who elected me. And my citizens have no interest in open border policies.
Okay, I mean, we could talk about this all day, but I've only got you for half an hour and I want to move on. You've been at the National Conservative Conference this week here in Brussels, which was interesting to say the least, in that they tried to close it down on 3 different occasions, didn't manage in the end. Free speech. I mean, you're also in the European Parliament. How do you assess free speech, both here in Belgium, given the context, given the conference, and also legislation such as the Digital Services Act? I ask you in particular because I know that you have a case pending with Meta, the Facebook owner. Let's start with that. What's the situation with your pending case, please? And why have you had to take the company to court?
Well, you probably remember the Black Lives Matter riots. I think it was in June 2021. And I think it was horrible. We must respect our history and our heritage. You don't attack statues, because attacking statues is attacking history and culture of people. And we know what happens when statues are attacked or books are burned. In the end, people will be attacked. So what I did on Facebook a message with a picture of a Nazi book burning. And I said, we cannot allow this, because first they come after the statues, then after the books, and then after other people.
Okay.
So I was denouncing the violence and calling for tolerance in our society. Facebook, 7 months later, suddenly I was banned for a year. And you know what they said to legitimize their decision? That I was promoting terrorist organizations. Just imagine that. Now, I was banned for a year of posting anything on Facebook. I have the 5th largest or the 4th largest Facebook page here in Flanders, more than 235,000 followers, and people could not see anything from me. After this censorship, then I am shadow banned. I used to have, on average, 150,000 people in reach of my messages, on average. Sometimes even 500,000 or 1 million people. But on average, 150,000. After my official sanction, it is now dropped to, let's say, 10,000. This is shadow banning. And why is this problematic? Because now we have elections and people need to decide on who am I voting for. And before the elections, they need to be informed on what are their politicians doing, what are their points of view, how do they explain themselves. People need information, citizens need information. So if we allow that a company, a monopolist as Facebook, manipulates the information flow between politicians, citizens, and between citizens, and decide on what message who can see and or cannot see, then Facebook is interfering and manipulating our elections. And we simply cannot allow this. This is not about me. This is about everybody.
Right, and you're going to court. What is the status of the court case?
Well, we're now in court. It's an appeals court, so a high court here in Belgium. On the 6th of May, they will plead, so the lawyers will plead. And the verdict will be after the elections. The Belgian judicial system is politically appointed, and they for two times, I think, they postponed the meeting. So the verdict will be automatically after elections. And this brings me maybe to the NatCon conference,
right?
Because I understand perfectly well that these images of police invading a peaceful meeting of conservatives in the rest of the world, people are looking what's happening in Belgium. But to us Flemish, it's quite normal, to be honest. We have experienced and endured this for decades.
You're talking about the media cordon sanitaire that
No.
exists.
I'm not talking about the media consultant. I'm talking about the abuse of power of politicians to outlaw meetings, to neglect fundamental rights of citizens. You know, when Vlaams Belang, the largest party here in Belgium already in 2004, and now again according to the polls, every time we hold a meeting here in Brussels, it's the same trick as they did to NatCon now. So they are left-wing extremists, Antifa mobs, thugs who threaten with violence, and then even, if I might say, the Human Rights League is behind this. And just imagine, this is 1984 all over again. The Human Rights League trying to neglect the basic rights of the opposition. They receive hundreds of thousands of euros in subsidies by the system. You see, so it's like the deep state working together.
Right.
So, and it's always the same thing. And then the mayor says, well, there's a threat to public order, so your meeting cannot happen. And then you need to go to the High Court. So every time the judges in the highest court in Belgium, they ban this kind of censorship every time again. But yet it happens every time again. We have warned them from NatCon because
you won
we have
this time. Well, the courts opened the conference back up.
Maybe we even gave some advice on how to tackle it.
Right. Okay. So to be fair to the judicial system here in Belgium, they did uphold free speech in this case. I'm talking specifically about the conference.
They do it in every case, basically, or almost in every case. But is this how we see fundamental rights in society, where you need to pay lawyers to have your fundamental rights, to be able to exercise them?
Right.
This is not how it should be.
Right.
You should guarantee, and I will add one more thing. According to the penal code in Belgium, if a government official or an elected politician does these kind of things, they should be sentenced to up to a prison sentence of 1 year. How come the Belgian public prosecutor is not investigating this? Because it's the deep state, it's a political system, it's a corrupt political system. And why? And then I come to what we started on, because Flemish nationalist parties are gaining ground, and now is the election. It's like the fin de regime, the end of the regime we are experiencing. And my message to all of these people in the Belgian political system is that these kind of dictatorial regimes, we have seen it in the past, and the executioners, the last executioners, are mostly the first to be on trial after the system collapses.
I want to just quickly take you back to the point you made about Facebook, because I've had other politicians complaining about having their reach turned down. But is it not the case that social media platforms, including Meta and Facebook, have changed their algorithms and moved away from news? I'm just wondering to what extent this is a direct censorship effort, and to what extent it could be a change in the algorithm moving away from news. Have you considered this?
Then, first of all, there should be transparency on the algorithm. The algorithm should be applied to every user and every page on the same way. Otherwise, they are discriminating against. Out of the data we have collected, there's a clear case of discrimination, but it's now up to the court to verdict on this.
And what about the Digital Services Act? Wouldn't this in some way help with transparency?
No, absolutely not. It's quite the opposite. There are some items in the Digital Services Act which are useful, but otherwise are very disturbing to what our idea of freedom of information and freedom of expression is. I think that what is legal, according to law, offline, should also be legal online.
Yeah,
it's not up to the
European Commission says this as well. It's one of the arguments that both sides use.
No, but they are doing exactly the opposite, because they have this system imposed on the big tech platforms like Facebook and so on, that they need these trusted flaggers. So even if it's like trusted flaggers, it's an employee of this company who will determine if something is legal or not. It's beyond imagination. It's, in my opinion, outsourcing censorship to these big tech companies, and we simply cannot allow this.
I want to move on again. We're coming towards the end of our time, but as we're headed towards the European elections, there are the two other subjects I wanted to address. The first is the groups within the European Parliament. Now we have the ECR group and the ID group, both on the right of the European Parliament. Some talk about maybe putting together a joint bloc group, whatever you want to call it. Is this possible, in your opinion? and I hear that it would be difficult because of foreign policy issues.
Well, all of our parties within ID group or within ECR group are not the same. We have differences, but there's common ground. Our vision on migration, our vision on democracy, the emphasizing of the constitutional liberties, for example, is very important to all of us. The national sovereignty and so on, family values and so on. So I think there is common ground enough to work together. The only question is, do we need one group? If we have one group, then automatically there will be more differences than if we have two groups. But on the other hand, if we could have one group, then maybe we could be the biggest group in parliament, which is a very powerful political signal. In my opinion, it's not necessary to have one group, but we are open for business. If we can reach an agreement and build a large coalition as possible within one group, it's fine by me. Vlaams Belang is open for business. We're talking to everybody. We want to be as strong as possible. But even if we remain in two different groups, then nevertheless, we need to cooperate because we need to build coalitions also with the EPP and with some elements of the Renew group, for example. We need to build coalitions to have an alternative to this EU extremist policy over the last years, the climate madness, the EU migration pact, and so on.
And that brings me on to Mrs. von der Leyen. What do you think to her prospects of getting reappointed for another mandate?
Van der Leyen barely got elected in 2019 with some of the votes of the Polish PiS party. I think this was an error on the side of the Poles, but it's up to them to decide on how they vote, of course. Now, what is the agenda of Van der Leyen she is defending now? It's the Green Deal, it's the climate madness, it's impoverishment for our people and the loss of competition for our businesses. It's climate madness that nobody actually wants. So this needs to be renegotiated. The second is the EU migration pact. This is also numerous countries, including Poland of Donald Tusk, has already said that they don't agree. They don't like it. They don't want to be imposed quotas on asylum seekers and so on. So, and the third one is the Digital Services Act and the rule of law mechanism. The misuse, the blackmail against countries, the interference in internal affairs. So these three topics are her political heritage. So I cannot imagine that she will get re-elected, not only no matter what composition of parliament there will be, but first there are elections. And in the founding member states of the European Union, Germany, France, Belgium, and so on, Holland, in the founding members, ID group is number 1 or number 2 and gaining ground. So this is a very clear signal that the voters are fed up with it. They want another kind of policy. Van der Leyen must go. And then we are going to build on a different coalition with conservative, patriots, nationalists, Christian democratic
Right, so
forces.
you think she won't have the majority she requires in the next parliament to get another term? Do you think?
I don't think so. And my party, Vlaams Belang, will certainly not vote for her.
Right, okay. The future of Europe, you've mentioned before we started this interview that now everything is up for grabs in that there are plans to perhaps reform the treaty, rewrite the treaty. Mm-hmm. You see this as an opportunity, which I found interesting. Can you quickly explain that?
Yes, well, their agenda, we have been discussing the policies of the last years. What is their agenda for the future? They want to impose EU taxes, EU debt. They want an EU army. They want to suppress the veto right of the member states. So therefore, they need treaty change. But when they want to change a treaty, everything's on the table. The books are open. So this is, according to me and to the ID group, a wonderful opportunity to promote our alternative vision for the European Union and to indeed change the treaties again, but in the right direction. I think we must rebuild the European cooperation, which is a positive thing. It was all originated about economic cooperation between sovereign nation states in a principle of subsidiarity. So only do it on a higher level when it's absolutely necessary. Last session, the European Commission, the European Parliament rather, they even decided on with which hand you need to open your car with the right hand. This is absurd. And the curling of the bananas is another example. So I think that this is an opportunity for us. We want to have this renaissance of the European idea, and this is our offer to the voters in this election.
Right, reform, not leave. leaving the EU is not on the table, correct?
For my part, it has never been on the table because Flanders is a country at the heart of Europe with big neighboring countries. We have a very open economy, the most open economy in Europe. So we are trade-oriented. We are pro-free market. We love Europe and its culture and its civilization and its trade, but you just don't like the bureaucrats here in Brussels.
So it needs reforming. I'm wondering if it's even possible for a country, especially within the Eurozone, to leave.
Well, it has never happened, as no country has ever left, set aside Great Britain. They have experiencing some difficulties now, but right after Brexit, they had the highest economic growth of the G7 countries for 2 consecutive years. In the COVID crisis, they tackled it in a more efficient way than the European Union, which was all bound together in this group purchase of the vaccines, for example. But I think it's just it's a question of democracy and of the will of the people. And I want to restore this will of the people, and people have the power to do it.
I'm asking everyone the same question when they come in now, and this is the one I want to end on. It's also connected with the future of Europe, and that is there such a thing? It's a philosophical question. Is there such a thing as a European identity?
I think so. If we look at the roots, it's like I think Europe, at the heart of it is diversity. And this is also the slogan of the European Union. Unity in diversity.
United in diversity.
United in diversity. And at the heart of it is identity. You need identity to be diverse. It's the differences that make Europe, Europe. We have shed just look at our history. What a unique civilization we have. We're like a families of identities and nations and peoples and countries. We're like a big family. We belong together, but we're not the same. But we recognize each other. I speak English for a reason, because we learned in high school, and German and French and so on. I think we belong together. We have a unique common civilization, but we're not the same, and we must embrace these differences, because these differences make up our identity and make Europe, Europe. And I would say, make Europe great again.
And what are the elements we have in common?
I think, for example, if you look at the freedoms we established, the democracy originated in Greece, the philosophy, for example, just the way we look at what is beautiful, for example. The arts, the scientific research, we have shed the light of our civilization has shed light in the darkness all over the world. In the rest of the world, they are looking with admiration to the European heritage and to European culture and identity. So I think we must embrace this.
Tom Vandendriessche, that's all we have time for. I appreciate you coming. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching.